The next tab is the sketch tab. That's this other icon here, and I've just sort of made up some mock sketch here as an example, but you'll see the line plot and the station names identified there. This is being displayed at a scale of 1 to 500, and there's a grid here, and you can select it. You can tap and hold and go to options to turn all these things on and off so that you can display the grid or not display the grid. You can use thick lines, which is what I prefer, or if you deselect that, it'll use thin lines, which are a little harder to read. So those are some of the options that are available under that menu. This grid, since we've chosen imperial units, the grid is in, each box is 5 feet by 5 feet by default. And if you're in metric units, then each grid box is 1 meter by 1 meter. So for sketching purposes, you may want to, you kind of want to know that for reference purposes. So right now I'm at a scale of 1 to 500, and again the plus and minus buttons allow you to zoom in and out. For sketching, I'll generally have it displayed at a scale of something like 1 to 300 or 1 to 200, which allows enough room to be able to see what I'm doing and sketch with enough detail and accuracy. And once you've picked a scale where you want to sketch, the interface is fairly straightforward. You have this sort of menu at the top here, which is pretty simple. There's an arrow, which is selected right now. There's a little box around it, meaning that that's selected. And with the arrow selected, you can sort of grab and move, and you can use your fingers well. This is not a multi-touch screen, so pinch and zoom does not work, but you can move it around with the arrow selected, and then you can zoom in and out with the plus and minus buttons. The colored dots at the top of the screen are the pen tools. So these are the only ones that are available. And I actually prefer this. It's a much simpler interface. You don't have different line brushes or symbol sets or things like that to choose from, but you can choose, you can just choose different line colors. And I generally use sort of standard conventions. So I'll use black for walls, and then I use brown for things like ledges, floor ledges or ceiling ledges, or rocks or sediment, sort of floor detail. I'll use blue for water features. I use orange for speleothems, secondary deposits, gypsum, things like that. And then I use red for text. So as a suggestion, as you're conducting the survey, and the instrument person takes a front sight, and so in this case they did 3 front sights, and the Smart Check identifies that as a survey shot. After that shot has been collected, you can shoot any number of splay shots to define the room, or to shoot at specific targets like rocks or ledges that are within the walls. But traditional surveys use left, right, up, and down measurements. And what I like to do is when I get to the next station, the next 4 shots I like to take are a left, right, up, and down shot. And so I've done that here just as an example. So we've done 3 shots from station 7 to station 8, and then the next 4 shots are to the left, right, up, and down from station 8. So the to field is left empty. If that's empty, then this defines this as a splay shot. And the splays can be in any direction, so they may as well be left, right, up, and down. I've done the same thing then once I've done the next shot from 8 to 9, and then I have the next 4 measurements at station 9 are the left, right, up, and down. And if you go to the sketch page, the left and right on the plan view sketch, left and right are shown on there, and so that gives you some guidance. You can go to sketch, and then you know that the wall is there, and it helps you with a more accurate sketch. So another thing you can do in what they call the outline or plan view is you can do cross sections. So if you've done left, right, up, and down, those will help you with the cross section. So we'll go back to the arrow for selecting things, and we can select that station if we tap on it, and you can see down at the bottom it shows 1.9, which is that station. If you tap and hold on it, some options come up. Again, you can go back to the data page or the overview map, but there's also a cross section that shows up here. So if you tap on cross section, the next thing is to tap where you want to draw that cross section. So let's say we want it over here, and I tap there. It'll place the cross section there, and it's a little hard to see, but there's a dotted line that shows where that cross section is, that it's associated with that station. And then you have these cross lines, which are the left, right, up, and down measurements that we took. And then you can go back here and select the drawing tool again, and you can draw your cross section, and you've got the left, right, up, and down as guidelines for the shape and where the walls as well as the ceiling and floor are located. And you can also do profile view sketches, and to get to the profile view menu, what they call side view, you tap the sketch button again, second time, and the picture changes a little bit. But we'll go back to the select arrow, and then you can pan around. Again, you can zoom in and out. And this is our extended profile view. And if we've done left, right, up, and down like we did for those last two stations, those lines will show up here again, and it gives you some guidance. So if you want to draw the ceiling and floor, you have those there to guide you for where those are located. And you can put in some floor detail. Again, just to demonstrate how it works. A couple other things you can do with your survey. If you're on a survey trip and the passage you're surveying ends, and you're going to leave that area and go to another part of the cave and start surveying another lead, you'll want to go in and save under File and save any progress you've made. And then rather than go to New Cave, you can go to Menu, File, and just say New. And it does create a new file. It's basically a new sketch file. The data that you've collected so far remains there, but the sketch page will be cleared. And then you can start a new survey in a new area and start a new survey designation. Maybe we go to survey number 2, which might stand for the B survey. And we can start surveying that new passage, and that data will show up. And then we can start a new sketch associated with that, but that needs to be saved out as a separate file. And the other time I use the new function is if I have a passage where, say I have a hole in the floor of a room that I've surveyed, and the survey is going to continue down that hole, and it goes underneath existing sketch. And it may not be easy to draw that if there's a passage above or below other passage that I've already surveyed. So in a lot of cases, what I'll do is go to File, New, and start a new survey for passage that's going over or under existing passage. So I'll just show you a couple of examples of real sketches that I've done. You can go to File and Open and navigate, and this is Southern Splendor, which is an area in Carlsbad Caverns. And you'll see the data here, and with each of these I did a single front sight, and I manually entered the station names, and then did left, right, and up and down measurements at each station. So if I go from the data page over to the sketch page, it's on profile view, but again, you can zoom in. You can draw formations and floor detail and things like that. And I find that the stylus and the digitizer on these PocketTopo is actually pretty responsive. There's very little lag, and so as you write, handwriting and things like that, it's pretty accurate to the way it would look on a piece of paper. With some of the newer devices that use Wacom styluses, there's a little bit of a lag, and there's a tendency for the lines that you draw to want to simplify themselves. Sometimes they sort of turn into simpler curves than what you drew in reality due to that lag. But these older stylus is actually pretty responsive. And so just to show you, this is the extended profile view of that survey. And you can see where on the profile view, the up and down measurements show up as lines, and again, it gives you some guidance as to where the ceiling is and where the floor is, so you can more accurately sketch. If I tap this again, it goes to the plan view, again what they call the outline view, and I've got a couple of cross sections in here, and if I zoom in, you can see that although I'm not using a symbol library, if I want to draw symbols like stalactites, stalagmites, or helictites that exist in this passage, I just draw them by hand. And I may use a particular color to differentiate them from other features in the cave passage, but I just draw those symbols out, and it's reasonably quick. It's at least as quick as it is on a piece of paper. You can see a cross section here, and again, the left, right, and up and down measurements show up and give you some guidance as to where to draw the walls and the ceiling and the floor. So that's sort of a brief, or maybe not so brief, overview of the PocketTopo software. And if you're interested in it, I'd encourage you to go ahead and get it and just play around with it on the surface before you go on a survey trip, so that you get a little more familiar with the menus and the sketching functions. It's pretty intuitive, and it's a pretty short learning curve, so you can pick it up and become proficient pretty quickly. But I would encourage you to take a little time at home and practice with it before you go on a survey trip, and in particular get familiar with saving files and creating new files for when you change surveys, and the process for doing that, because there is a risk that if you overwrite a file with a new sketch with the same name as one with an old sketch, you might lose some data, which would be kind of catastrophic. So practice with that before you go on a cave trip, and let me know if you have any questions.